Hello, my name is Margaret Adele, and welcome to the best books of 2020, aka the best books I read this year. I read a lot more than I expected to. I was close to 170, but couldn't quite make it. So I picked the top 10 books that I read, both traditional and indie, that really stuck with me for one reason or another. This is not in any particular order. It's not like the best of, and I'm not going to do a worst books of 2020 list. I do not have anything against them. They are valid. I just personally need all of the good, happy feelings that I can get. So I'm going to focus on the good ones. Now, first up, I have Felix Ever After by Kason Callender. This is a YA contemporary all about a young trans boy who is, I guess, outed or has a hate crime done against him where pre-transition pictures are posted all around the school he goes to, and he thinks he knows who did it, and so his plan is to make the bully fall in love with him and use that to get back at him. It's a kind of strange plan, admittedly, but the identity searching in the book was really poignant, and Ezra is goals. So I was very happy, especially with that scene at Pride. I think I reread that like 5 times before I sent it back to the library, just that scene, because I loved it so much. And it's definitely one of those things where the point of his arc isn't what he thinks it is, and what he really needs isn't necessarily what he thinks he needs, and the reveal of the bully and all of that was fairly interesting. But in general, I just think this is a very powerful book for anyone searching for that kind of gender identity. Up next, I did decide that I could only do one book per author because, you know, Shami Stovall would be on here 20 times. But I knew one of her books was going to be on here, and it took me a second to figure out which one, but eventually I went with Colosseum Arcanist by Shami Stovall. This is the 3rd in the 5th Chronicle series, and I read multiple in that series this year. I also read the sequel to this one, Plague Arcanist, and admittedly, the ending of that one left me a lot happier than the ending of this one. This one destroyed my soul, but it destroyed my soul because it was a really powerful ending and exactly the next step that the story needed to take. Now, obviously, I can't tell you too much because spoilers, but I really like that this one does have a lot in a Colosseum. The group of apprentices reaches this one place that's having this tournament where all of the Arcanists and their Eldrin, their mythical creatures that they are bonded with, kind of like low-key high fantasy Pokemon, can battle to win. And I thought it was a brilliant world building because you got to see all of these different magic styles and all of these Eldrin in full swing fighting each other. And it was so much fun. The world building was done so nicely, which is great because this thing is literally 700 pages. So the fact that I loved it that much and the ending hit me that hard after 700 pages, and I didn't feel tired at the end of it. I didn't feel like, oh, I just read a 700-page book. I would honestly read any giant book Shami Stovall sends my way, which is probably a good thing because the book after this one was still like 600 pages, and I'm pretty sure the next one, which I will be sent, I think, early 2021, is also looking to be big. So it just seems like she's decided that she's going to go chonky with her books from here on out, and honestly, I'm here for it. Up next was another indie high fantasy, and that is All the King's Traitors by Keelan Rivers. This is a queer norm high fantasy all about this really evil king who is supposed to be a god on Earth, and all of the people who want to dethrone him for a myriad of reasons, and basically all those people coming together to do exactly that. They are holding secrets from each other. Sometimes there's betrayals. There's one dude that doesn't have really good motives for wanting to dethrone the queen. His motives are very selfish, and he's probably not much better. But he does give me some Zuko vibes. And I loved the magic system. Again, it's very different with the Godstones and how it's so randomized. The Godstones can control whatever they hit when they first fall to Earth. So if they hit a bird, that thing controls birds now. And it's just ludicrous, but also so interesting. And the characters were very varied. A lot of queer characters. The character with an anxiety disorder, just so much, and I'm super excited. I believe, if I remember correctly, I am on track to get the sequel to this one, which I believe is called All the Queen's Renegades, which is just a great titling format, but I'm super excited for that one, and this is one of the few books that prove that I can still do high fantasy books. They just have to be, like, very specifically done. Very new, fresh, and of course, queer. The next book on the best of 2020 list is Deal with the Devil by Kit Roca. This is actually an author duo who are hybrid authors. They have actually published more indie than traditional. I believe this is their first traditional book, and I have read some of their erotica stuff, but this is all about this group of mercenary librarians, and the minute I heard that phrase or saw that phrase on Bookish First, I was like, need. So this is all about this group of mercenary librarians who are tasked with finding all of these lost texts in this dystopian. And basically this involves the group of mercenary librarians meeting up with this group of ex-soldiers who have their own motives for meeting up. Basically it is two found families of chaos bisexuals coming together, and I'm low-key in love with that. Not low-key, high-key in love with that. And it was just, the characters were really what stood out. Basically your standard dystopian in a lot of ways, and because it was dystopian, the book release actually got pushed back significantly because they kept waiting for the pandemic to be over before everyone realized it's gonna be a while. But in general, I'm highly in love with this one. Unfortunately, I can't be sure that I'd get the arc of the next one because this was sent in a raffle by the publisher. So maybe I can send some emails and see. I don't know. Regardless, would definitely suggest this one. Up next is the book that I've also spoken a lot about, and it's one of those where you wouldn't guess how powerful it was to me by just looking at it, because it looks like your run-of-the-mill indie shifter romance, and that is Wildfire Griffin by Zoe Chant. Now, I said this before, but this book has a very strange sentimental value to me, because this is the book I picked up the same day that we got our very first foster placement this year. That's right, I became a foster parent in a pandemic, and it is as stressful as that sounds. And I knew that I wanted to keep reading, but I also knew that I needed something a little bit lighter to not drag my attention away from where it needed to be at the time. And so I found this book that is all about indie shifter romances. Well, they're not indie in the book is indie, who are also hotshots, aka the firefighters that go in to fight forest fires. And that seemed like a ludicrous, almost outlandish idea of oh, they're shifters and they're also firefighters, but it low-key worked in the story because there is this supernatural element causing these forest fires, and they had to figure out why. And this is one of those every book is a romance wherein a different couple gets together, and I loved it because in the first one our female heroine is an autistic woman who is also a badass firefighter. Later on in the series, at one point she's literally standing over the Griffin dude as he's unconscious, wielding an axe to fight off demons. That image is seared into my brain. But this series as a whole has a lot of diversity. You have people of all different races, ethnicities, black characters, indigenous characters. You also have a lot of neurodiversity in it. You have, again, autism. You have a character with ADD and ADHD and anxiety disorder. And it was just probably the author's best written series because I tried reading a lot of her other books and they were middling to okay, but this one is cream of the crop. So if you're going to start this author's work anywhere, I definitely recommend you start it here. I actually read I believe it was the 5th book in the series, right after that first placement was reunified back with her birth family to combat the feels, and I'm hoping the 6th book will be released sometime in 2021, and I'm not totally prepared because that is the end of the series, and I don't usually get through series that fast, but that one was just that good. And also I roped my friend Laura Diaz de Arce into reading it with me, so now I have a friend to fangirl with, and it's so nice. Up next was a review book that I actually got completely on a whim. I'd read another book from this author for last year's in December, and I messaged him because I didn't know how to pronounce his last name, and when he heard that I was talking about one of his books on my BookTube channel, he offered me a review copy of the next one, and I'm so glad that happened because I'm in love with this book, and that is By Sea and Sky by Antoine Bondelet. This is about African sky pirates. Let me say that again. African sky pirates. Specifically, this is the backstory. You are told ahead of time that our main character here becomes this ferocious female pirate queen roaming the skies in her flying ship, and you know she ends up there. But this story is basically talking about how she got there. So this is the beginning of a trilogy, and it involves both an African-inspired country, and this is also inspired off of Middle Eastern culture, and it was so energetic and nice, and they had these big battles, and the battles often had big consequences, even if the characters lived through it, and it felt so action-packed and swashbuckly, and at the end, there's gonna be a fearsome flying African pirate queen. That's just perfect. I don't even have to really work to even tell people to read this one. It sells itself. But I am excited, and yes, I believe that I am on track to get the sequel. I have no idea when it comes out. Some indie authors are like gung-ho and releasing like 3 to 4 books in a series in a year. Some could go an entire year between releases. I don't know, but I might be getting impatient. Next up is a book that low-key changed my lifestyle without meaning to. That was not the point of this. This is not technically a self-help book. It just had that effect on me. And that is Out of the Pantry by Ronnie Robinson. This is a memoir of the author's disordered eating struggle. I believe overeating, if I remember correctly. And she discussed how she would eat even when she wasn't hungry, or even when it wasn't good for her, or even when it was out of the trash, because she had the constant compulsion to eat, and her feelings on her health and all of that. And as I was reading it, low-key realized that's how I acted around soda, where I would drink soda even when it left a weird taste in my mouth, and even when I was really thirsty for something else, and even when it was costing me a lot of money to leave all of the soda undrunk, I would just keep buying it. And I started changing a lot of things in my life without really meaning to because of this book. I worked out almost every day for the last, what month is it? 5 months. And actually have like lost weight and gotten my acid reflux under control, and theoretically am sleeping better. I mean, I was before the newborn came into our house, but I don't think this book was meant to have that effect. But it is still a very powerful story about her overcoming disordered eating. Obviously trigger warnings, but you know, it literally says a disordered eating journey on the cover. So, you know, be on the lookout for that if you're into it. But I did like how this is an eating disorder that is not talked about as much as other disorders like anorexia or bulimia, but it is still very much a thing. I also liked her references to intuitive eating, and she actually like cites some sources that she used to help get over, or I guess get through the struggle. So if you are struggling with something similar and you can handle the obviously triggering content, I would 100% suggest this one. Up next is a book that is very indicative of my feelings on a lot of those mass market paperbacks as a whole, and that is Touched by an Alien by Ginny Koch. This is a super kitschy, late 2000s alien sci-fi all about this woman who accidentally kills an evil super mutant without meaning to, or I guess just on intuition, and finds herself drafted into this secret government agency staffed by super hot aliens. And yes, romance ensues, as well as, you know, fights with evil super mutants. This is so tongue-in-cheek. This is so like comedy and satirical, and like she has to have like Aerosmith playing while she's fighting the evil super mutants, and she's wearing like band tees while everyone else is dressed in suits, and she's like using hairspray from her purse as a weapon. Like, it's just so tongue-in-cheek, so knows what it is, and it's so funny. All the sarcastic quips. I actually read the sequel to this one as well, and this is going to be as part of my, you know, list of books to keep up with on my backlist. But this just is everything I love about mass market sci-fi in general. Just the weirder the better. It should always be super weird. And speaking of super weird sci-fi, let's talk about redneck mutants. That's right, next up on the list is Dusk Mountain Blues by Dustin J. Munden. This is a sci-fi western all about this family of Hicks that also happen to have sci-fi mutations defending their land against this invading force of militia officers who want to take over their planet for some reason, and no one's quite sure why. And it is like the moonshiner Hicks that you know and love, but like some of them can turn into giant bug mutants, and other ones can like light themselves on fire. And there's also this section that's like basically a Louisiana bayou. It's so much fun, and so much emphasis on family and sticking together and supporting your family, and gigantic ending at the end. And I'm low-key feeling that the next one is going to turn into a space opera, which is my favorite. It's my absolute favorite genre of book basically ever. Well, no, indie shifter romances are up there, but I loved this one. I loved all of the different tropes of sci-fi twisted and turned on their heads. Dustin Munden is very adept at that kind of silly, self-aware twist on genre tropes. Unfortunately, the first book I read from him didn't really make my best of list because it was high fantasy, and I'm much more attuned with sci-fi than high fantasy. But if you are looking to get into that sci-fi western genre, you have to check this one out. And last up is the book that, on the surface, is probably pretty standard for indie romances, but for some reason, I just fell in love with it and read it in a day, and I got the review copy for the sequel, even though I technically didn't review the first, and it got weird. But that is Hades by Carly Spade. This is the contemporary mythos series wherein the ancient Greek gods come back to Earth and find new partners, and this one is obviously about Hades. In this story, Persephone has divorced him, has left, and he is basically sent to this resort because he's being so grumpy. The other gods are like, oh my god, stop. So he meets this digital forensic analysis who has a thing for wanting to know more about people and wanting to figure out puzzles, and she decides that the broody dude in black that calls himself literally Hades, she needs to know more about him, and romance ensues. And it's, again, tongue-in-cheek. It's very adorable. There was this giant, like, fight of the gods at the end that made it, like, suddenly this action book, which I also loved. A little bit of a melodrama. And I did review the sequel to this year, but while I did also very much enjoy that one, there's just something about this one that stuck with me. Maybe it was because, like, it was a version of the Hades Persephone myth that didn't piss me off. Because most of the time, anything involving any kind of kidnapping turning to love just infuriates me. But this one doesn't have that, so yay. You can also see my feelings on this one, even though I didn't do a review. I did a reading vlog for this one and another one of Carly Spade's books. I will also have any other reviews I did for these books down in the description below. There's quite a bit of them. Or any other vlogs. I think almost all of these have some other kind of video for them, and they will all be down in the description. So that is my best books of 2020 list. And it's nice to just sit and talk about how much I love things, and I love this time of year. I love all the retrospective videos and all of the goal setting. I will eventually be putting out my goals for next year, both my reading and for my channel. I low-key want to step it up a little bit now that I've gotten a couple years on BookTube under my belt, and I really feel like I have a good idea of what my channel is and who it's for. But you know, I'm not crazy. I know the audio-visual quality is crap. But anyway, thank you so much for sticking around. I hope you read some fantastic book this year. And if not, I hope you read some fantastic books next year. Everyone deserves good books. And with nothing else to say, I hope you have a wonderful day and a fabulous new year.